Okay, so today we are going to do something a little bit different. Um, I am going to put some sprinklers in front of me, but I'm going to start out with parts. And these parts came off of a sprinkler that looks like, or happen to be the same as this sprinkler. So this is the one that I had put out there. Got stuff on it already, brand new. Okay, so I had put this one actually out there, and as you saw, it got stuck and hung up on the trip lever. And what happened was this was so weak that it would come out and actually catch the lever and hang like that, and then it was going back and forth like this. So I said, well, let me take this apart and see if I can't make it so that I could put a different journal tube and sleeve on there, or maybe even the same sleeve, but a journal tube that was just a hair shorter. Well, so in my discovery process, as I was taking this apart, so you see this is the same thing. So I took it completely apart. And the first thing was, the usual thing is you can usually take the journal tube off. Well, in this case, this is completely molded so that the journal tube is part of the sprinkler itself, or the body itself. And so if you were to look in here, you would be able to see that this is literally glued or part of the normal construction. So what I figured they had to do is they put the sleeve on here and then they glued on the end, which looks like this. Doesn't look like much, but however, they took whatever was there and they spread it so that it came out like this, nice and even. Now, the reason why I'm going through all this process is because I'm hoping that you can see that this is, there's no mechanism for, let's say, taking this off. And so this just has the hole in here. Now, I would say normally this looked like a decent sprinkler and should work. But the practice was, depending on how the stops are. So if the stops had been actually in reverse, like this, that when it went back here, it would have not been so much that it would have slipped out. But see how close it is on the forward side, it might have. So it didn't make any difference. I was not going to win on this one. So this is not, I mean, this looks like a decent constructed sprinkler, but it is cheap. And so I took it apart. So now I have parts. So I've got this spring, which I could use on another sleeve. I can use this sleeve and use these stops, even though they're pretty cheap stops. So let me just take the parts out one by one. So the other thing, notice that I also took out the nozzle, which is this little thing, tiny little hole, but this is pretty, the hole size is pretty average. Even though I boogered this up a little bit as I was trying to get it out, the nozzle is not that well made, but it would serve its purpose. This is the pin for the deflector. I mean the diffuser. And then of course You have the deflector, which would go on the top, which I took off. And of course, this part, which goes here. And strangely enough, when I pulled this out, it came out together like this in one piece. So it was kind of interesting how that managed to go, but as you can see, it was all, very well thought out and constructed, even though the pieces are cheap. Again, it's a cheap arm, but it's still usable. Now, the one thing that I already tried to do is put this arm into another body. And what I noticed is that the height of what I have here squeezed together, the height of where the pin would go, the actual center pin for this to rotate on, this is actually a little taller than in other sprinklers. So like, I don't have one that's free. So this is an old sprinkler. This is an old Rainbird body. And when I tried to compare this side by side, this was enough higher that I wouldn't even be able to get it in there, let alone make it work. So that was important to note. I took out the reversing mechanism. So I have a spring that when I need to use it. Now I thought this was interesting too. I thought, well, okay, I've got sprinklers that don't have, like this one, I don't have the reversing mechanism in there. But here's what's interesting. I took that out, and even though this looks about the same, the notch here where the reversing mechanism comes up is a smaller notch, where this one is much wider. And so when you go to put that in there, this actually doesn't actually, once I'd have it in there all the way, it comes up against the edge there. I'd have to actually file it down, which I wouldn't do in this particular case. So they're basically the same in the basic concept, but they used a smaller space here. And so they didn't, so also when this sprinkler goes into reverse, let's see if I can do this. So when this comes up, the space that the arm has going back and forth is smaller than other sprinklers, or than other models. So I managed to get some washers out of this. I'm not used to seeing a plastic pin, but I'm sure it's sufficient for the operation of this sprinkler. But what you see here in parts is this. And the main reason why I took it apart was because of this catch on this one. It was loose enough to where it was easy enough for it to flip up and catch on the stops. So, and I don't mind sacrificing the sprinkler for parts, because I'm always using parts interchangeably on one sprinkler or another. So now, having said all that, the main thing that's important here is showing you that there's no design for taking this off. So it doesn't have a slot in it like you would see on a Rainbird, and this happens to be a metal base, which they used back then. So that has a slot. So this actually unscrews. This kind does not. So let me put that to the side. And I am going to show you a number of sprinklers. So both of these are brand new. Make sure we're looking and we can see here. So both of these are brand new, and both of them are reasonably cheaply made. Doesn't mean they're not any good. Have not tested this one out yet, but I suspect this one will be pretty decent. What's different about this sprinkler over the one that I currently have on the stand that it was in my last test is the arm. The width of this PJ arm here is wider than what you find in most of the arms, like this one. So you can see the difference. This is narrow, this one's wide. And I don't know what the advantage is yet, but I will find out when I go to test it. And we will make a test on that. Now, having made the point about the bottom, this one is not designed to be taken apart. So assuming you don't think you're ever going to need to take it apart, or if it gets to the point where it stops working for some reason or another, you would actually have to like cut this bottom off and disassemble the rest of this. And then of course it wouldn't be usable anymore, because this does not unscrew. These are designed to be, it's all part of the body, one continuous part. This one, even though this is a cheap model as well, I bought several of these. This has the slot, and this can actually be unscrewed and taken apart. And so that's the nice thing about that. And the other thing that's unique, let's see, did I bring it? Okay. Well, this old sprinkler, so the journal tube is a little bit smaller in size, meaning that the screw threads in here are smaller than what was always on a brass sprinkler. And your brass sprinkler had a wider journal tube, so they didn't match. Rainbird eventually modified, as they kept on changing their model, to the wider model, which looks like nope. Well, let me find one that unscrews that. So well prepared, and yet I can't find what I'm looking for. Oh, here we go. So this is just a body. Now this journal tube, if you were to see the thickness here, and which I can't show you on this one because I don't have it apart, but the thickness on this is smaller than the thickness on this. So this sleeve I took off would probably fit on this journal tube, but would not fit on this one. And I didn't bring, I was playing with the parts, but I don't have it out here. So I just want you to know there's a difference in size. They're not all the same. And so this is true with the design in these newer sprinklers. These impact sprinklers are very similar. You can see the design in the body is very much the same, but here they did this a little bit different. The nozzle is a little different. And the nozzle on this one, very hard to see. So did I bring another one of these? No. But the nozzle in here is very much the same as this one. I can get my hands on it. There we go. So basically, if for some reason you had to take this one out and replace it with another one, you have one. And so some of these parts are interchangeable. This one's a little different, and I don't know if the inside is about the same size or not, but I wouldn't know until I tested it. So I think that's all I wanted to show on this. And I will eventually put these out there and do videos and show you what they're like when they are working. So this is a cheap model that I bought from a local store called Grocery Outlet. I think this is from, what's the model? DRAM, D-R-A-M. Don't even know. I don't see their sprinklers on the market now, but doesn't mean they're not still making them. But this has the journal tube, which is removable. And I should have brought my screwdriver out just to prove the point, but these they work. I'm not crazy about it, but you know, it serves a purpose and it does do the job. So if I needed to, let's say, clean this out, I can on these other ones. Some of the other ones with the smaller opening and doesn't have any way for you to unscrew this, then I wouldn't be able to do anything. I couldn't be able to clean those. So here's one that you've seen out there before, one of my early videos, but this has a little bit different design. So instead of a slot, it has a hex, and you put a hex tool in here and you can unscrew this. And so that's how that's designed. This is one of my favorites, even though this is really basically a very cheap sprinkler. But I want you to see, these look identical other than the fact that this has a second nozzle on it. But notice the difference on the bottom. This one you can't take apart. This one you can. So what looks the same isn't the same. And I just want you to know that as much as I like these sprinklers, I don't think I'll ever have any problems with them. These are really very reliable. Part of my problem with is the spring design. They have that way too tight. I think this one is less so. Yeah, this one is not as tight, but still important to see that. So I had the Blackbird and the Aqualine, both out on the system. Both work fine. But even Rainbird designed their model to not be taken apart. This is just, it's a spread. This is all one solid piece. And so, you look at it from the bottom here, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between one or the other. This part looks the same. The arms look very much the same. This looks very much the same. And of course, the actual arm is a little bit different. This is the Rainbird, this is the Aqualine. And I was surprised how well the Aqualine worked. But again, both of these are not designed to be taken apart. So, if you bought one of these, even though I didn't pay a lot for the Aqualine, it should last quite a while. It should last pretty well. This is another one of these cheapies that is, so the arm is very much like this one that I took apart. Let's see, would that fit in there? Yeah, so this body is like the body of the one that I took apart. And you can see they're very much similar in design. They're not perfectly the same, but very much similar. And so you can see that difference. But the arm looks the same. You put these arms like next to each other, look at it from the other side, and you'd say, oh, someone used the same design arm. Okay, this feels a little lighter than this one. But this sprinkler came from Walmart. Initially, when I first put it on the system, it wobbled. So this doesn't have the spring in here to keep that pressure, to help keep it secure. So that was a default in the design. Now, I don't know if this one actually unscrews or not, but they give you no design for taking this apart. And so I'm limited to what I can take apart, and that's, the top here, the arm, the diffuser, and the reversing mechanism. So I wanted to show you this because it looks like, if you didn't know, it looks like a Nelson Beta 2, but it's not. It has the yellow top, the yellow stops, but it's not a Nelson. Another one that I bought, again, has the same kind of nozzle, that little tiny nozzle. But this one has a slot and it can be taken apart. So it's good to note that. I've kind of been experimenting with this one. And so it worked fine when I first put it on. So I take nothing from this model. I have another one that I haven't touched yet. What I had done, just so you can see, so a lot of these, let's see, this is a good example. So a lot of these have like a lip on the edge here. So instead of the water going pretty much straight out, like you will find on your Rainbird, this is smooth here. And that's what I expect. And this one's not. So this actually goes at a 30 degree to 45 degree angle to the side. And even though this works very well, it's side splashes, a issue. And I saw that as a problem with this design. So I took and scraped off the edge. It worked fine till I took off the edge. And so, again, this is going to be experimental to see if I can take and either bend this to curve just a hair bit upward or put an edge back on here just enough. But otherwise, this particular sprinkler works just fine and actually is a good one. And the fact that I can take this one apart makes it even better. I showed you this one as well, and this has this is pretty smooth, but it does kind of curve a little bit. Someone suggested I put that the one that I have out there now looked a little bit like a Milner. This is a Milner. And they have ones with the green arm and ones with the black arm. So, but this is removable. It's designed to be removable. These are, I'm going to say, pretty much flawless sprinklers. This arm is too tight, at least for my standards. But I'll adjust that. I think the springs are much better today than they were years ago. As you can see, the spring on this one is pretty corroded, and even though this spring is still held up, it is corroded. These springs are a lot of times stainless steel, so they don't corrode like they did years ago. But this arm is too tight for my liking. But in general, the sprinkler is solid and it works. So if you ever get a set, and give me 1 minute, I'm going to pull one up for you. You will see them come on a card like this. Quite frequently you'll find these in Home Depot. Sometimes you'll find them as cheap as $10 for the 2 of them. I don't need the spike bases, but the 2 sprinklers together for $10, it's worth it. At least it is to me. And for the home garden, they're good sprinklers. All the detailed information for, how to set them up is there on the back for people who don't know. Put that to the side. So that's what this is. And the other thing to note about these is the arm is black on this one. Arm is green on this one. And you can see the design of the body is just a hair different. It's still the same solid sprinkler. Black, green, green, black. The tops of these, though, are green, like this one. So, this model isn't identical to that, but I can tell you they work. They work well. So I'm giving you 2 more here that have the hex insert. It means that it can be removed. These look similar, and they are similar, but they're different. And again, the springs on these have a lot of effect on how well these work. But the basic design, so the stops on these look very much the same. These are better stops than some of the ones that on some of these other ones that are really cheap. They're a little wider in width, height to width, if you want to call it. So like if you look at the stop on this one, you see how narrow these stops are versus these. So, and this doesn't rotate real freely. I mean, it rotates easy enough, but the spring, see, now this one rotates much easier, but the spring tension creates that pressure so it doesn't, like just freely rotate real easy, which slows the sprinkler down a little bit. Now this one is APT, so, and it has a number 8427 on it, so that's this particular model. And again, it is like, and it looks identical to this one. Okay. Very little difference, I think, overall. Just depends on who's manufacturing it. This one doesn't have a name on it. This one does. This one has a name on it. It's got DC on it, but I don't know who DC is. So you really have to be careful when you go to buy these cheaper ones. But at the same time, they all work. And this has got a removable base, where this one doesn't. So this one doesn't have an identification on it. But this is the basic NAND model that I have liked. Usually when I see these in the catalog or when I see them online, I go for this versus one like this. It doesn't mean this isn't any good. This is still my preferred. And yet they work very similar. I think this works a little smoother. And part of that is, again, in the spring design. This doesn't have enough coils in it, but a lot of times this is not too bad at tightness. This one's just a little bit tighter. And again, one of the things I'm looking at doing is making springs, but both of these are good, and I would recommend both of those. Now I'm going to get into some of the fun stuff here, because I already mentioned about the Gilmore in a previous video, and the Gilmore is very solid. It's actually a Nelson, an LR Nelson brand, and so these are very well made. Don't like the way it operates, but it is still very well made and it works well. You can, I mean, these are a lot more expensive and you pay for them. This is, I don't know if that's a PIM or POM. Kind of hard to tell in there. But you can see on the side there it says Gilmore, and so that's all you need to know. There is a metal version of this basic design, and the reversing mechanism is on the rear, but is like this type of reversing mechanism. Oh, that's another thing that's important about these. These have the nozzle is removable, so you can, and I can't remove it, but it is designed to be removable, like what Rainbird started on their model, which I didn't even pull out to show you. But most of the models are a little bit like this one. This is unusual because you can see has these little slots in there. Thinking, I don't know if that helps improve the the, the the stream, but it works well. I think, I mean, this feels very solid. I think the spring is a little too tight, but again, that's just me. You know, not everybody's working on low pressure, and although I'm working on house pressure, but one of the things I discovered was that part of the hose was underneath one of the tires of the car, and so I haven't been getting full pressure, and I didn't realize that. Well, I'm going to retest some of the sprinklers that I have. So, one of my favorites. This is a Rainbird. This is a, what is this? This is the 14V. And so, the wedge design, which I really like. And of course, again, on all your brass sprinklers, for the most part, I'm going to show you an exception. You'll find the slot, and these brass journal tubes are removable. So, and this doesn't have the free motion that you might expect on like some of these plastic ones. You know, this rotates easy. This has the pressure from the spring, and so it has kind of a much tighter rotation. But the one thing is, when it hits the arm hits the body, it moves. And this one, it does move. So here's one that I bought, which is a little bit of a look-alike. And again, the journal tube is under pressure so that it doesn't just freely rotate and wobble, which can happen. Notice the small size of the stream hole, the nozzle hole. This one was a little bit larger. I have not tested this one yet, but it is yet to come. Tells you that it's made in Taiwan, if you can see that. It's called Rainburst, and this is a, looks like dash 101 1C2. And I don't know, that could be IC2, but it looks like maybe that is IC2. But Rainburst, made in Taiwan. This has a nice arm feel. Let's see. This is a little bit more solid in the way that feels. This has a little softer feel, but it's still solid. I bet that moved very well. And again, the idea is that if I took this journal tube off and replaced it and put it over here with the same sleeve or without the same sleeves, they're interchangeable. They fit. All right, here comes the WeatherTech, and doesn't have any design to take this apart. I'd be willing to bet that I probably could unscrew this, but they designed this so well that they protected the insides. And when you rotate this versus rotating, this is much harder to rotate, but, or even this one, which they're smooth, but not smooth like this. this is smooth. And it just, I mean, this really has a smoothness that the others don't. But they designed this well to protect the journal tube and the sleeve so that, you know, it will remain smooth. So it has a little bit larger hole, but and the wide spoon. And I haven't tested this yet, and it's yet to come. Now for the unique surprise. I bet you haven't seen one like this. And again, the journal tube, which is removable, and all of these journal tubes and sleeves are literally interchangeable because the internal size here is the same. There may be an exception, but they're all interchangeable. This particular sprinkler is a Aquaburst. Let's see, I think it's AL1023, I think it was. And it does have a 1020, or it has a 23 on that side of the arm, and a 10 over on this side. So it has a 10 and a 23, and it may be the angle. So but that became the part number, 1023. Has an R in there, an R there, and this has a metal feel. This is plastic. It's plastic. And here's another Aquaburst, but this is a reversible part circle. The mechanism is different than what I think I've seen in the past. But this also has a very solid feel. This is X-25 Aquaburst. This I can't wait to try out because of the uniqueness of the design. Now, when I bought this did not come with a nozzle for this side. This particular side, it's solid, so it doesn't have a nozzle there. It's just a stopper. So I had bought some nozzles anyway, and so I put that on here. I think this is an 1/8, and I haven't screwed it on tight yet. It's still kind of pretty rough, but I expect this to work pretty well. This is a neat little sprinkler. I saw this design, I think, on eBay, and so I kept looking for a place where I could buy it cheaper, and I found one of the plumbing supply places that carried it online. So that was where I bought both of these, and I saw this one, which I hadn't seen before, and I said, well, it also has a 1/2-inch base, so that will also be one of my tests. But the main thing about all of this is finding sprinklers that have the slot on it, and finding sprinklers like this that don't. So just be aware of that. Surprisingly, and again, I'll use these two sprinklers that are on the card. The one has the removable base and the other one does not. Doesn't make the one without the removable base any less of a sprinkler, but it's probably not quite the quality of the one that does. So just be aware of that. And for the most part, these parts are interchangeable, and that's the big thing. And you know, it's like I mentioned, if I took out some of the other arms that I have on other sprinklers and pulled it out and showed you the height of the center, you'll see that it's shorter than this one. This one's a little taller than others that I've seen in the past. Oh, and one of the things that's new in a lot of the designs, instead of having, this is a good one to show. So if you can see the holes here for the spring, well, now what they're doing is just putting hooks so you can like unhook it and not have to like thread it through the holes. And again, I'm moving this around so to make sure you can see the holes here. But that's how it's attached, and it's different. It's funny. This is so much heavier than this. This is so light by comparison. And also, that's another thing that is a point that I'll make. Rainbird, when they were making these, and I think they're still probably using the same Delrin plastic, and that's what they called it, was Delrin, was the name of the plastic that they used. But it's a much solider, much stronger feel than a lot of these newer ones, which just has a cheap plastic. And I'm sure that it's a different type of plastic that they're using these days. So anyway, there you go. If you have any questions, please ask me, because again, this is not all of my collection. This is just a small portion of it, and I intend to put each one of these on the stand and do a video of them, so that's still yet to come. And with that, let's see, I got that one sitting over there, so there's one more to my stack. So just sitting here, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 sprinklers. And that's just a fraction of what I have sitting inside. So just so you know, hopefully this turned out the way I expected, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know. And please subscribe and mark the like button, please. Talk to you later.